All right, so I wanted to make a video first showing some jig skirt making, and then secondly just showing a couple fish I caught on them. So for those of you who don't know, I started a bait company that's Big River Bait Company, mostly making jigs. Also got some bladed jigs, got a few of these guys in the works. Not really said anything much about that yet, but I got some buzz baits going. Might do some spinner baits, but let's talk about jigs. So your basics, to hold the skirt on, you've got 4 ways of doing it. You've got O-rings, and you can buy specifically for jigs O-rings, or you could buy like McMaster-Carr, that kind of thing. You have the clear or the brown tan latex bands. These are good for something with a clear skirt where you don't want it to show. Typically on my stuff, I don't care that it shows that much. These are probably the least durable. They're going to last the least amount of time. And then you have the black rubber tubing sections, rubber bands, whatever you want to call them. These are pretty good. I think the O-rings might be a little better, but these are pretty good. So our first setup here, we've already slid our 2 rubber bands on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a couple of these little football head, I'm calling them micro finesse jigs. No weed guard, basically just a Ned rig style setup, 1/8 ounce, like a #1 hook. And we're going to make a skirt for each of these. So this is kind of a trick that I figured out recently. A lot of this other stuff is nothing that I can take credit for. So big tip here when you're doing this, make sure before you start that you go ahead and slip these on here. You can't put them on after you've hooked your skirt material. So I'm going to go with 3 colors. This is calls it a green pumpkin. Different brands have different colors. The camera probably won't do this justice. Both of these are green pumpkin. But this one is like a green pumpkin multicolored metal flake, where this one is a green pumpkin with tiny little black spots. I mean, they're like way smaller than pepper. And then this is a blue, and also this is a barbed wire pattern is what they call that, if you can see that. This is a blue barbed wire, blue metal flake. Hopefully the metal flake shows up. It's pretty bright in person. So what we're going to do to make these little micro jig skirts, we're going to hook this on here. And of course I'm having trouble because I'm on camera, trying to keep it in frame. So we're going to hook these on here. And this is a 1/2 tab and a 1/2 tab and a full tab. So I've got a 1/2 tab of the blue, a 1/2 tab of the darker green pumpkin with a metal flake, and then the lighter green pumpkin is a full tab. So basically 2 tabs. And then what we're going to do, and this is a little different than most skirt making, we're going to pull it up in there about probably 3/4 of an inch to an inch. We're going to slip that band off. And then we're going to go until there's about roughly that same amount sticking out this end. We're going to slip that band off. Just go ahead and unhook it and pull that out. All right, so now we've got our scissors. We're going to take and we're going to trim the tab end off there. Come around here, might be a little short. We'll cut this one as close as we can. And looks pretty good. And then if you're like, what the heck is he making? This is kind of the trick to this skirt that I really, really like. So you take a full tab, and for these little, what I kind of do is pinch it between the two, you know, my first two fingers down there, and, you know, kind of stretch it so I can cut it. What you end up with, and they're not exactly the same size, but you end up with two tiny little skirts. And these are just the coolest little jigs. So what we're going to do is thread this on here. This one's a little bit big, but I think it'll be fine. We're going to thread it on here. Like so. And what we end up with is a perfect little jig for basically fishing like a Ned rig. Throw any of the TRD baits, any of the craws baits, the little Strike King craw bait. Let's do this one. This one's going to look a little more like that one. Looks a little bit bigger and bulkier. This one, and I typically try to put the short end against the jig head, but I honestly don't know how much it matters. Like, you smack these things off rocks for an hour and they're not going to look like they did when you put them together anyway. And in fact, they tend to get bit better after they've been smacked off rocks for an hour. It's this weird thing. You try to make baits really pretty, and then they bite the ones that, you know, look like they've been 10 rounds with Conor McGregor or something. So, but that's just a really neat little finessey bait you can put together. So that's how we do the micro finesse jigs, and I've got a video of catching a couple fish on that. I'll put it at the end of this video. All right, so this time I'm going to do a 1/4 ounce ball head jig. This is more of a finesse, true finesse jig rather than the micro jig. We could do a finesse style skirt where they kind of flare out right there around the jig head, but I think on this one we're going to do a traditional style skirt. This jig head could really go either way with that. It could be fished like a traditional style, or it could be set up as more of a finesse jig. But, so we're going to load up. This one I think I'm going to use an O-ring. So we'll pop one of these little O-rings out of here. If you have a good cheap source for O-rings and you don't want to buy the dedicated ones, I think like a Buna N O-ring would work. I think. So, I'm going to put our tool on here. Load this thing up. It's pretty stinking tight on there. Slip our wire through to pull this through. And what I've got is a, this is a Do It brand. I'm pretty sure. I've got a lot of different brands. This is a red barbed wire with red metal flake pattern. This is a green pumpkin, and there's like 10 different green pumpkins out there. This is a green pumpkin, just a traditional big flake green pumpkin. And then this is a motor oil. So I've got a half a strip, a full strip, and like a little less than a half a strip. All right, so I cut off filming there. Hopefully I caught that. Let's go over it just really quickly. So I'm going to do this 1/4 ounce jig head, finesse jig, ball head jig. Got the red barbed wire pattern, metal flake, traditional green pumpkin, and motor oil with green flake. We've got about a full tab, and another half a tab for 2 tabs. If this was a larger jig, I'd probably do 2.5 tabs or even 3 tabs. For a small jig like this, I think 2 tabs is plenty. If I was going to cut it short, I might go a little more. But 2 tabs, roughly, is plenty for this. All right, so we got it loaded up. And this one has a mark down here, and I typically go somewhere, this is like 20 millimeters right there, if you can see that. Pop a rubber band off. These rubber bands are really nice. Or these O-rings are really nice. I really, you know, they really started growing on me. I've read people who are like, oh, they don't work, or they're not tight enough, or, well, you know, they sell these specifically for this. And I think if you got a good quality O-ring, it would be, even if it wasn't for this, it would be fine. Because the other ones will rot. I don't think the O-rings will rot. So, all right, slip it through. Roll it up on there, kind of fix some of our little ones that want to stray here. And we have a green pumpkin red jig, little 1/4 ounce ball head jig that should be really, really good for spotted bass, for tough, you know, slow fishing, smallmouth. All right. All right, so we've got 2 tabs of black with a little bit of blue metal flake in there. Actually, that may have just fallen off this piece right here. And then we have a purple barbed wire pattern with blue metal flake. So I preloaded one of the bands on here, and we're gonna do three tabs for this one. This is going to be a buzzbait skirt, so we want a little bit fuller. We want to help keep the bait up, and we want to help keep the weeds away from the bait a little more. More than we did with the small jigs. If we were doing a big jig, like a 1/2 ounce or above, we'd probably want to throw a little more skirt material on there. But pretty good color combo, kind of an old school color combo. Definitely works good at night, dark water, muddy, murky. Pull it through to about that 20 mark there, that 20 millimeter mark there. Roll it up, pop it off there. And then typically on this, so if you're doing a finesse jig, you want the, that one didn't get clipped all the way. If you're doing like a finesse jig and you want them to stand out, the shorter they are, the more they'll stand out. On this, if you want it to create bulk, to create like a kind of a target for the fish to hit, you want to put the long end towards the front of the bait, towards the lead head on the bait. So we're just going to thread that on there. All right, and we've got a very old school buzzbait skirt there, extra bulky. So we've got our kind of our 3 standards here. Got our little finesse jigs. This in particular is even smaller than a standard finesse jig, kind of an unusual setup. I really like it. We have our standard jig skirt. So this is like, you're not wanting a, you know, a huge skirt. You want just a normal profile. You don't want like that big presence in the water, extra, even more than a normal jig. And then this is our kind of oversized. Like this is probably about as much as you can do without a hand tie. I'll probably talk about hand ties later on, but like this is, you know, this is a little more of like a premium deal, like a custom deal. You know, I think 2 tabs is kind of the standard, 2.5 is the standard, 3 is a little more, but it definitely adds a lot of bulk and a lot of fluff to the skirt.